Welcome to another episode of Systematic Geekology. This is a space where we seek to create and cultivate healthy conversations between those things we geek out on and the philosophical and theological questions that often arise out of our fandoms. Like, what does it mean to be human? What makes a hero? What makes a villain? How do the stories and narratives we geek out on shape how we live in the world? We are your priest to the geeks. We aren't all ordained, but we see ourselves as mediators at the intersection of geek culture and going deeper in our faith. We don't always have to agree, but we do respect each other, and we see everyone as a beloved child of God. Everyone geeks out on something, so come geek out with us and enjoy the show.
You're listening to an Anazao Ministries podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, goofs, gammas, and librarians of all ages, we welcome you all to the wonderful world of Walt Disney's Animation Studios. That's right, we are back with our Disney animated series. Today we are doing the second film in our home video series, which technically is not an era, but it's fine. Don't worry about that. We are going to be talking about an extremely goofy movie. Which extremely goofy movie? An extremely goofy movie. Yes. Particles are weird. Anyway, I am Joshua Noel, one of your hosts. I am here with the one and only Christian Ashley, future master of all traits. How's it going?
All right, Joshua, how about yourself?
I'm doing wonderful. I love referencing conversations before the podcast records, because then everyone's like, what the heck are they talking about? And it's great.
Wow.
What I've been geeking out on lately, there's been a lot. Yeah, it's hard to pin stuff down because I've just been kind of all over the place. But here's what I'm going to go with. Pokemon, is it Arceus? Is that how I say that?
Arceus, who cares?
Yeah. I've been replaying it because due to other text conversations, I was like, what is my favorite Pokemon game? And I was like, I think it might be this. Let me see. I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, I enjoy this. Christian, what have you been geeking out on lately?
Well, mine's a double because I watched the movie and a remake. I watched the remake first of Jacob's Ladder, thinking I was watching the original movie until I went halfway through and said, this is not exactly how this was described to me. So I realized, okay, I'm going to finish this movie, then watch the original. The original's better. But yeah, it's one of those bucket list films I had to get off the list. And I got to see both of them.
Nice. Very nice. Well, everyone, if you would do us a couple of favors, we would appreciate it. Mainly, rate and review this show on Podchaser. If you're on your laptop, go to podchaser.com. Leave us a rate and review there. It helps more than rating and review other places. But if you're not on your laptop, if you're on your phone and you're using the Spotify app, then you can leave a 5 stars there on the app, on the podcast channel. And then on Apple Podcasts, you can also scroll down to the bottom of the page and leave a rating and review there. We appreciate that. Also, this show wouldn't be possible without our supporters. We have supporters on Patreon, Captivate, and Apple Podcasts. Today, we want to do a big shout out and thank you to Jonathan Augustin for helping support this show. Again, this is the second film that we're covering in the home video, not era, but era of Disney animation. I still kind of feel like it's an era, even though it's not, because there's definitely a whole different vibe to those home video sequels that Disney was putting out in the early 2000s. And that's why we're doing it. We're going to be talking about it amongst the eras, even though it's not technically an era, to catch up on all the playlists, all the reviews that we've done in this different era of Disney animation series. You can see that there's a link below, playlist stuff. Okay, now, main episode. Christian, Ashley, I'm excited for this. Could you, for the dear people listening, introduce what is this movie and why did we choose it? And not summarizing it, just what is it and why this one of all the home videos?
Yeah. This is a sequel to a Goofy movie. Kind of, sort of, depends on who you listen to as far as continuity goes. But for the most part, it's just Max going to college, Goofy having to go to college as well, due to events to happen. And why did we choose it? Because this is a fun film. And we had to discuss this. Like, I might even like this more than a Goofy movie.
I think that might be a bad opinion, Christian.
So that means it's a good opinion.
I was like, I'm known as the bad opinion guy, but I think that might just be bad. You know what? I was surprised like while I was doing research for this episode to learn that like people just don't like this movie. Originally, when it came out, it had better reviews than the original, which is wild to me. But like as time has gone on, people are just like, yeah, they just don't love this one for some reason. Like all the message boards and stuff, people are like, why'd they make this? And I'm like, y'all are stupid. Come on, get happy. Come on. I love this film personally. I think it's a lot of fun. I remember watching it a lot as a child. I couldn't tell you why. like as an adult, this movie is like it's an entirely different movie. And I'm like, as a kid, was I watching this thinking of like the emotions and what Goofy's going through? Or was I just like, yeah, Max, do cool skateboard stuff? Like, well, like, why did I love this as a kid so much?
Yeah, because it's definitely different watching it as a kid and watching it as an adult. Because you have all this like deep drama on the side of Goofy trying to reconcile with his son and like losing his job and being an empty nester, and then Max trying to be his own man. And you're just like, yeah, do some cool tricks, guys. Yeah, those gammas suck.
Also, I still think one of my favorite parts, for some reason, the main love interest of PJ is literally named in credits Parade Girl from the Cafe. like she doesn't get a name. It's awful.
The disrespect.
I was like, and she's so like, honestly, she's kind of a cool character. Like it's like if you watch Community, she's like, what if Britta was cool? That's who she is.
She's the kind of character that if I have met people like her in real life, and I want nothing to do with them because they're the faux philosophical, the faux intellectual type who just spout meaningless nonsense. Then they sound like they know what they're talking about. But like as a character in the film, she's fine.
I liked her spunk. I like spunky people.
Yes.
Like, that was fun. And she wasn't to me, she wasn't annoying. And it's hard to be that kind of character and not be annoying.
That's why it's fine as a character in a film, not so much in real life.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, so as far as like background with this, I mentioned I watched it a lot growing up. I remember watching the first one in theaters when I was a kid. Maybe I didn't watch it in theaters, but I remember watching it. I know it came out in theaters. This one did not. Also, I'll talk about that later. But the first one came out in theaters and should be part of the Renaissance, but it's not. And that's just annoying. But I watched Goof Troop. I loved Goof Troop as a kid. So Goof Troop, DuckTales, Darkwing Duck, like these were my show. Rescue Rangers, like that was like, I grew up in Florida, so it's like Disney Channel was always on. I'm like, yeah. And then this movie comes out and it's like a sequel to that first Goofy movie, which I already loved. And it's a sequel to Goof Troop, sort of. And you're like, well, yeah, I'm going to watch this. This is awesome. And then lastly, for some reason, the one part of this movie that stuck in my dad's head forever was the very beginning when Pete pulls I can't miss you if you don't leave. And he just thought that line.
That's a dad thing. My dad did the exact same thing.
Oh, my dad thought that was so funny. And he held on to that all the way till I actually went to college. And he still talked about it. I was like, all right, Dad.
Oh, yeah. That's a little private joke between siblings because we would say it to each other.
Fantastic. Is there... What is your history with these characters and all the stuff?
Yeah.
I mean, it's Goofy. I grew up in Florida. Like I don't like, I could keep talking about my history with it, but it honestly never ends. Pluto was my favorite. Goofy was a close second because they're the dogs. I mean, yeah.
For me, I did watch a little bit of Goof Troop growing up. It wasn't one of my favorites. It's one of those, like, if it was on, it was on. But a Goofy movie, when that came out, I'm fairly certain we did go out in theaters to see it. What was that, 95, 96-ish when that happened? So
something like that.
Yeah. And went into it, loved that movie. And then years later, they announced a sequel, like pretty much every Disney film, regardless. If it came out on VHS, we owned it. And I definitely watched this one over multiple times and quoting it to my siblings. And, of course, like we already talked about the line what Pete says, my dad would use it on us, in jest. I do really like this film.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, Like looking at it analytically now, I'm like, there's a lot to criticize. Like, it really is not one of Disney's best, but it's so much fun that it's like, who cares? Like, just turn your big brain off and enjoy the goofiness. Like, this, it's literally, it's in the name. Like, that's why you're watching this, because it is goofy, not because it's going to be like an artistically well done film. Like, calm down. It's goofy.
It's part of the genre to have the goofiness there, but not enough to break the reality of the world. Because there's some things like, it's so obvious the Gammas are cheating in this film that they have ESPN cameras on the entire film, and you're going, we didn't find out they were cheating until the end?
God.
But
yeah, that was...
but we don't worry about that.
So much fun was like Disney for this film was like, hey, we bought ESPN. People are kind of upset that we're becoming a monopoly. What should we do? Let's blast ESPN on every single thing in this movie and X Games just to flex that we own it.
I mean,
just cause we can.
Why not?
If you're the mouse,
why not?
What are you gonna do? You can't come at the mouse. Ask Ron DeSantis. Oh man, no, yeah, it's wild. It's out. It's just, I can't even, like, it's a crazy film. I can't wait to get more into it, but we're going to get past this, and I'm going to ask you whether or not you think you can summarize the story of this film.
Okay. So we start off, Max, PJ, and Bobby are about to go off to college. They're having a celebration with Goofy and Pete's places. Goofy's very upset because he doesn't want to lose his son. He's the only thing left he has. I mean, pretty much family-wise, as we can see in the film. And Max just wants to get away from the house because what teenager doesn't? And so the strife is happening there. Max leaves the next day with the guys to college. They're at this point in time, they're like trying to become pro skaters and X game enthusiasts. So all these radical things at a time is what they were attempting to do. And Goofy, in the midst of his empty nest, like, is under so much in a depressive state that he ends up being Goofy at his job and wrecks the entire place and gets fired. And since this is in an age where people still believe that getting a college degree meant you got a job, they said, here's what you're going to do. You know, you're not going to find a job anywhere. We need you to have a college degree. So he goes to school. There's conflict between him and Max. Goofy finds himself a nice little love interest in Sylvia. Then they're fighting against this group known as the Gammas for like a place in the X Games. Why two teams from the same college? Don't worry about it. We'll just move on from there. And it's the conflict between father and son and how they kind of come together at the very end to realize, hey, you have your life, I have my life, but we can intermingle them at times. And that's okay.
Brilliant. And there's so much of this is like, I think the thing it gets criticized for is that it's very like, some of the plots are just all over the place. Some of the stuff is like, oh, this doesn't make sense. That's not really what college is like, or this character's so one dimensional. But really, I think if you're paying attention, what it does really well is it takes that stuff from the first movie that was beautiful, like the actual good character development stuff, and it carries it into this film. And then also takes all the stuff from Goof Troop that is that silly, cartoonish, like, hey, we're just going to have college bad guy. What's he going to be like? I don't know. His name's going to be something fancy. He'll be the third. He'll be the head of a friend. You know, like the most stereotypical thing possible, because, like, that's what would have happened in the show. So, like, the kids who are watching this are watching it because of the show. And it's like, hey, we got to deliver on that same, like, attitude that we had there, which is where you get a beret girl from the cafe.
Yes.
I also love that, like there's not a ton connecting the first movie in this one, but then you get Bobby. Bobby, for some reason, they're like, this guy, he's going to stick around. He doesn't care about nacho cheese anymore, but he's still here.
He's our friend now. They have one season with nacho cheese.
That's it. He's not obsessed.
Yeah. But don't ask where Roxanne is at. You know, did they break up in between movies? So is this in the same continuity? Don't worry about it.
The one that bugs me more, though, is like, what happened to Pete's wife and PJ's sister? Like, there's like this whole family in the show, and then like come this movie, Pete's like, once I get rid of PJ, I get the house to myself. And I'm like, wait, what? You got a whole family. What happened to like?
Might be going through a divorce. I mean, Pete's
killed
Pete,
off.
Could you live with him?
Yeah, just like some of the stuff you're like, okay, yeah, that's a whole, I guess.
Maybe what was her name? It was like Peg or something like that. Found out he was working with Maleficent. You know, decided it was time to cut ties.
Yeah. I was like, wait, what's this chest y'all are looking for? Well, I can't tell you yet. That's not until the 4th game. Well, people waited 30 years. That's too long to make people wait. And she left because of my fury about Kingdom Hearts 4.
Yes.
All the Darkwing Duck and Kingdom Hearts. Poor Will. If you're playing the drinking game, I apologize today. But I mean, you had Pete, you had Disney, you had this was just begging for it. It's like Theology Beer Camp. I'm going to be doing a panel with Benjamin Chica, who's been on our show before. And we're going to be talking about video games and theology and the courage to be and how you find yourself in the other. And I'm like, wait a minute, self in the other video game. Where have I heard that? Man, it's going to be a bad day for Will.
Well,
I just want to pause it.
Well,
I believe
sorry.
Kingdom Hearts might be the most Tillich video game of all time.
the most what?
Tillich. I think if Tillich were to come to our time and he was like, yo, what's one video game I should play as a renowned German philosopher and theologian, I'd be like, hey, let's play Kingdom Hearts. And he'd be all about it.
Only you would connect Tillich with Kingdom Hearts.
Listen, it's the courage to be and finding yourself in the other. What else is Kingdom Hearts about? Anyway, if you had to rate an extremely goofy movie, not The Courage to Be, just extremely goofy movie. If you had to rate it 0 to 10, where are you going and why?
I'm going 8. It's a solid film. It's not the best of the best by any stretch of the imagination. Animation's fine. The characterization's fine. It wraps up a little conveniently, but at the end of the day, it's a fun film with a lot to say on fatherhood and I guess is sonhood a word, and the relationship between the two and how you learn to be different people apart from each other, and yet also at the same time when you're with one another. So yeah, I'd definitely recommend this film with an 8 out of 10.
I'm gonna do some backtracking here. If I was doing a scale, if I wasn't rating it and I was scaling it from 0 to 10, and I was going like how happy I make it, 0, I was miserable, 10, I had a great time, then this film would probably be like an 8 or a 9. Like I have a really fun time watching this. But if I'm rating it, to me, that means I am comparing it to all Disney films. 0 is the worst Disney film, 10 is the best Disney film. This is probably a 4. Not because it's a bad movie, but because Disney just makes too many good things. Like honestly, if I'm just to pick random Disney movies out, I do think there's going to be more that I like more than this than less. And that's not saying anything bad about this film. It's just saying something great about Disney. Yeah. The one criticism that I think that really did stick out with me that is irksome about this film, even though, again, a lot of fun, and you need to turn your big bang off and just enjoy it and just know it's goofy. It's literally the character's name is what the movie is. It is a goofy movie. But the criticism was this is just a guy's film. All the guys' characters stay. All the female characters are either dead or don't show up. Pete's wife and sister are gone. The only real female character you get doesn't even get a name. And I'm like, oh, like the librarian has a name. I forget her name, but like that's it.
Sylvia.
It's like it's just
I watched it earlier today.
Yeah, but it's like the Boys Club film. But it's funny and it's goofy, and I feel like that's fine. Because I also feel like if you would have included a bunch of female characters and they were all being goofy and falling on their face, someone probably would have been upset about that too. No one comes out of this movie looking good. Yeah. You look goofy, you look like a jerk, or you're Pete. Pete's worse than a jerk. I don't know what Pete is.
Stupid review anyways. Why can't guys have guy films? Why can't ladies have lady films? Like, what's wrong with either one of those things? Yeah, I mean, I personally like some of them, but that's not for me.
I think I would have enjoyed if they had built out some of the, like, there's a lot I think that could have made this movie better. I would prefer to have a name. Yeah, if she had a name and they built her character out more, that beret girl. And I also think I would have enjoyed it more, and I understand why they wouldn't do this because, whatever. I think it would have been fun if it would have built more on, like, Max's mom, Goofy's past. Is Goofy struggling with guilt? Is that why he hasn't been in a relationship this whole time? Like I think they could have really fleshed out some stuff and still done it in a child-friendly way because Disney does that kind of stuff all the time. Like,
Disney kills mothers right and left. Yeah,
Finding Nemo, like Merlin's guilt drives the entire film. And I feel like they could have done something with that here and really built on that. But instead you get like Goofy stalking his son for most of the film, and it's like because they're trying to make a point that some parents just hold on too long, so they have to exaggerate it because it's Goofy. And then Max kind of being like, oh, leave me alone, Dad, and being a jerk about it. And be like, oh, don't be mean to your parents. And it's like, okay, yeah. It's a good father-son film. It's a little exaggerated, but it's, yeah, there's a lot of stuff I think they could have fleshed out, but it was fun.
Hello, friends. Are you enjoying what you're hearing from Systematic Geekology today in your earbuds, or whether it's on YouTube, or whether you're in traffic, or whether you're at work? Well, there's another way that you can stay engaged with us at Systematic Geekology, and that's on our Instagram account. Yes, hop over to Instagram, follow. We'll follow back. We promise. We post lots of fun stuff over there, whether they're updates on new podcasts that are coming out or getting ready to come out, or whether they're memes, or we're sharing what other of our friends are up to out in the world. Sometimes we go live at events, whether we're at a Comic-Con or whether we are just hanging out with friends on the back porch grilling out. You can follow us there. We also have videos and reels, like what's in Will's pull box from his local comic book store. He shares what he's reading in the world of comics. And then Christian is going to do some reviews of Spider-Man comics called Spidey Swing Bys. That's going to be fun. And then there's non-canon stuff. Non-canon? What? Yeah, Joshua's going to be reviewing one intellectual property from outside of the canon of his favorite fandoms, or a piece of literature that's a part of the biblical extra-canonical material. Man, that sounds like fun. But yeah, Instagram is one of my favorite social media outlets, and love to engage with friends and family over there. And so we hope that you can engage with us there.
Yeah, that's all. So I do want to go through some of the art and animation stuff before I list off some random things. Did you have anything that you noticed in the film's art or animation that you thought stuck out and was really cool?
Definitely the montage scenes we get in the film were pretty fun. The way Goofy's doing all these things that make no practical sense whatsoever to actually learning anything, but for the sake of a comedy, are quite well done. Being on a treadmill and reading a book, and reading one book in one hand, lifting it up, reading another book, lifting up another hand. That's pretty funny. The scene with the giant X falling down and Tank being caught in the midst of that, I thought the fire and the flames was done really well. It's a good emotional part of the movie too, that's conveyed by the animation. So yeah, those are two I'd pick out.
Yeah, my overall feelings was just kind of, it's funny, so I just don't really pay that much attention to the animation for this one, because it is mostly just there for comedy. But if you're looking for it, you can really tell, like, the art is all over the place. Like, you have some that's like, you could tell it's like the same animators on the first Goofy movie, and you're like, wow, that was really well done. And then you have some that you're like, what, did a child draw this, or like what's going on? And like then you have just like random CGI use, and it's not like specific things that are CGI. It's almost like they didn't finish, and at the end they were like, whatever scenes are left, let CGI do it. And it's like, why? It's just, you could tell that there was just a bunch of stuff kind of like patched together, and that does bug me. But if I'm not looking for it, I don't notice it. So who cares?
Okay.
As far as other stuff, some of the animators I want to bring out, Andrew Collins was part of this. He, if you want to know what he is known for, has worked on none other than Darkwing Duck, the Aladdin TV series, the Lion King sequels, Lion King 2 and Lion King 1.5, as well as Brother Bear 2 and a bunch of other stuff. Another animator on this film was Dan O'Sullivan. He did the Tigger movie. He was the artist responsible for the muses in the Hercules film, which were incredibly well done. He worked on Lion King, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Tarzan, and of course the original Goofy movie. He is just stellar icon of animation, so love him. You could for me, if I had to pick like one scene that was animated really, really well, the whole acid trip that he has, which I'm just gonna keep harping on that scene because for me, for some reason, like as a kid, that's just like what stuck in my brain. And like Goofy's just taking his test, and it's like, come on, be happy, and it's like you get all the color scenes and stuff, and it's almost like throwback to the Three Caballeros when we did that episode. Like, yeah, this is just wild nonsense, and it's great.
Yes.
So yeah, that's
well, it provides a nice contrast between the reality of things and what Goofy is melting down into.
Yeah, like the biggest difference between the art here and the art in Three Caballeros is this one had a point. The Three Caballeros, we're gonna end this. How do we end a movie like that? Acid trip. That's it.
Genius. Hire this man.
Oh man. So as far as like the history behind an extremely Goofy movie, Lynn Sutherland produced it. He also is responsible for producing Mulan 2, for those who care about that. I don't. It wasn't good in my opinion.
It was not
Douglas McCarthy he was like one of the storyboard, I think he was the producer, the storyboard director, producer on this. He also worked on the Animaniacs, Pinky and the Brain, Digimon, Digital Monsters, Dexter's Laboratory, the Lilo and Stitch TV series, and of course none other than Phineas and Ferb. I love
the resume.
him. Yeah, Douglas McCarthy, great guy. Yeah, so there was a lot of talent behind this film, even if it wasn't as good as a Goofy movie, in my opinion. It's definitely better than Goof Troop. As much as I love the show, the show was not good. It was just funny because it was stupid. But yeah, so that's that. So, Christian, we like to pick a favorite scene, a favorite song, and a favorite character from this film. Have at it.
Okay. I'm going to do the empty nest montage. It's an odd choice to pick, but it really solidifies to me what's going on in Goofy's mind. It's like his son is not dead, but he's gone. The emotional closeness they had is no more because things have changed. And that's what happens when you leave the college and your parents, because unless you're commuting from home, you're going to be however many hours away. And they're going to be struggling with your loss. And once again, you're still alive. They're still alive, but you're not with each other anymore. You've had 18 years of togetherness, and now there's a gap, and it's displayed really well by the expressions on his face, the looking through Max's room and seeing like nothing, he's still looking after his son. He's putting his sock up in the drawer that's messed up, and then it gets to the point where he loses his job because of it. I think that whole scene there is just extremely well done.
Yeah, it was a good emotional moment. Which would bring me to my imaginary favorite scene that I made up. And then I'll give my real favorite scene. But I made up a scene where where Goofy gives Max the typewriter, and Max is like, "Oh, I don't need this." And then Max is like, "Actually, when you explained it to me that it came from your father and that this is meaningful, like that's really cool." And then they just never go back to that at all. So that really irked me, because it's like, wow, I really feel like you were setting something up here. Here's what they set up in my made up world. There's a scene where when Goofy loses concentration and he needs to get back to things, he's like distracted by all this stuff. And Max was like, "You know what? You can't get distracted on a typewriter. It's just right here." And Max goes to Goofy in his time of need and says, "Dad, use the typewriter." And then they use that thing that was placed to set something up that they never capitalized on. Okay, sorry. Made up scene over.
It's a waste of a Chekhov's gun. I'll agree with that.
Yeah.
It works in the sense that it's the generational divide of what Goofy think would be a cool gift for his son, but after that, it doesn't get brought up again. So I agree with you there.
Yeah. As far as my actual favorite scene, to absolutely no one's surprise, it's the acid trip. If it's him taking the quiz and all the crazy colors and stuff, I love it. It's just fun. It sits in my head, and it's great. Close runner up though, when Goofy gets the rockets on his skateboard and he does like all the crazy stuff, just because it's like, it's so reminiscent of like those old how-to Goofy shows, like Goofy, how to skate, and he just does everything wrong and it works for some reason because he's Goofy. I'm like, like it's one of those things of like, if you know Goofy at all, which apparently his son doesn't in this film, if you ask Goofy to do something really plain and ordinary, like walk across the street, he will fall on his face. He won't be able to do it. But if you make it the absolute most extreme ever, like you're going to walk across the street, but there's electric eels, our shark's going to fly through the sky and trying to eat you, and there's going to be flames everywhere, then Goofy will just walk through flawlessly somehow. Like like the more extreme it gets, the more likely Goofy's going to accidentally succeed. And they really showed that off, and I love that.
Let's see. Now, songs, I mean, there aren't any original songs to this movie. I think they're all from the 70s. But, your Shake Your Groove thing, it's hard to go wrong with that one. It's a good scene for, setting up Goofy and Sylvia up even more together as a couple and how they're in sync with one another. It feels like they've been dating a long time, even though that's literally their first date. I do love their meet cute earlier in the film too. That's really well done. But it also sets up in how, once again, without meaning to, Goofy is trumping Max's ability to be able to distinguish himself because he went somewhere else that Max went to. He did something else that brought attention to Goofy instead of Max, and I think that's well done in that scene.
Yeah, which actually gets to, and this isn't in our outline, but maybe we should talk about this a little bit later on, of how, like, even in church world, this happens a lot where, like, we don't know when to let someone else get the attention. When it's like, hey, our time's over. Maybe let them shine. And sometimes that means, even though I might be able to step onto the dance floor and shake my groove thing and get all the attention, maybe I don't, so that someone else can shine, have their moment, you know? But we'll talk about that later. As far as favorite song, Shake Your Groove Thing's a great one. But to everyone's shock, I'm going to pick Come On, Get Happy. Continue.
Okay. Anyways. Characters. I think both Goofy and Max are well in this film. They're not my favorites. I don't really have like a favorite, but for the sake of answering the question, I'll say Tank. That is our big guy, boisterous bruiser of the Gammas, who's, you know, the muscle and not exactly the smartest, you know, person there. But as we see through the film, there's a little bit more to him, and especially when he gets betrayed by Bradley, Upper Crust III, he manages to, you know, be saved by Goofy and Max and realizes, okay, these people were actually out for to help me, and my supposed fraternity brother wasn't, so I'm gonna let them win. And he gives Bradley his, you know, comeuppance that he deserves. And that typical character, by the way, is voiced by Brad Garrett, but it's either Patrick Warburton or Brad Garrett. That's your type of character we're dealing with here.
Great character. I feel like he's like one of like two characters that has like a real arc in the story. like somehow that random like tertiary character and then Goofy are like the only ones with like a real, because I feel like Max doesn't really change in this film that much.
He gets a better appreciation for his dad, but it's not like the most dramatic.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, well, I mean, that's arc. You had that at the end of the first movie. Like, you just kind of got reminded of it, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I think that's what happens to us, is that we learn lessons.
That's true.
And then a day later, a week later, a month later, a year later, we've forgotten the lesson. And I'm the worst of the worst in that regard.
Especially when you're a kid.
Yeah, if there's anything I'm bad at, it's learning my lesson.
Yeah, I remember that I need to be focused, responsible, and take my medicine for about a month, and then I run out of my medicine. I'm like, I don't need it, and then I learned my lesson all over again. I like that answer. It's hard to pick, like you said, it's hard to pick a favorite character because like I love Goofy, and if I'm taking like the totality of all the characters, like all of the things that they were all in, everything Pete's ever been in, like Pete's an awesome character, Max is an awesome character. You know, like if you're taking the totality, I would have to pick Goofy because like go all the way back to like A Christmas Carol, and you have that story where Goofy is like literally giving of himself to this poor family and giving up everything to help others, and like stays all night on the rooftop shouting for Santa for his son. And like Goofy is an incredible dad. If you're looking at like all the shows and different specials and stuff, and you're like, we don't know what happened to Miss Goof, but dang, like Goofy, like as a father, like that should be everyone's role model. But like in this movie specifically, he got a little overbearing. He really made life hard for Max, and it was really hard to like Goofy. You know, like honestly, it was difficult. Same thing with Max. I'm like, yo, you're unappreciative little jerk. Like it's Goofy. You have Goofy as a dad for all like.
That's 18-year-olds.
I know. It's hard to like
adults, but they're not there yet.
So here's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with a secondary character, PJ. I think PJ got like 3 lines in this movie or something, like almost nothing he had to say. But I just like, it's so relatable and funny to me how he was like, meet girl, change personality because girl cute, works out for PJ. And you're like, you know what? Yeah, like that's a terrible way to be, but that's realistic. Like when I was 18, if I met a cute girl at college and like, I don't know, she was into, actually, you know, real talk, this is what happened. I met a girl once who liked Harry Potter and I never seen it. And when I did try to watch it, I was like, yeah. So I just gave up. And then I met a girl who liked Harry Potter. I was like, well, you know what? That's my favorite movie now. I'm going to read all of the books, memorize random details to try to impress her, you know, like that's reality. And I was like, yeah, like you kind of want to be like, oh, PJ, there's so much better things to live for. But you're also like, just looking at it like for what it is. It's like, that's not only is it funny. Yeah, I've been that guy.
No, I mean, who among us has not done exactly that to try and impress some chick? I mean, that's how I watched the vast majority of the first season of Once Upon a Time, which had 20 some episodes out at that point in time, if I remember correctly, in a span of 3 days with no sleep, just to impress a girl.
That just, I'm like, That's just, that's how it is. Still, like, even like when I met my wife, I remember like suddenly like, okay, I could listen to these music, watch these movies, like, it's just, I think even as you get older and you're like, you don't change your personality for someone when you meet someone and they're into something, you really want to be into it. Like even if like now when my wife gets into stuff, like a couple of years ago, she really got into Greta Van Fleet. And it was like, I want to get into it because she's into it. And then sometimes you're like, I just can't. Like when you're an adult, you get to a point where you're able to be like, yeah, I wish I could get into this with you because I want to share it with you. But like, I just don't care about this. Like you get that ability when you're an adult. But when you're 18, that ability doesn't exist,
Yep. There's something you said for, I don't get this, but I'm glad you do. So let me support you.
Yeah, which we do a lot of in my household where like my wife's like, what are you watching? I'm like, I think it's called Delicious in Dungeon. I don't know. They're eating bad guys. And she's like, eating them? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, okay, I'm going to take a bath. And I'm like, great. And then like I come in and I'm like, what is on the TV right now? And it's like, well, it's a reality show and they're dating people, but they're not allowed to see each other because there's like a wall in between. I'm like, cool. I'm going to go work on podcast stuff in the other room. Like you just get to where you're like, some stuff, it's fine. I don't need to be a part of it.
Yes. You do you.
Oh, man. I love PJ, though. It's so funny. All right. So with that, we got our favorites out of the way or in the way. I don't know how you say that. We do want to talk about some of the bigger topics here. Family relationships is really like the big things. Like how do parents and children interact with one another? And we're going to talk about more about this next year, I think, and part of our polarization theme. We're going to look at how like Disney kind of often pits the children against the parents, But this one, you mentioned it before, like it's just reality. Like when you go to college, you're trying to learn to be your own man. And humanity lives in this odd space where like we're a little lower than the angels, but we're still like a little bit more than just creatures. Like we're not just beasts. So like we live in this odd space of existence because like part of our biology is I need to prove that I'm the alpha, so I'm gonna show up my dad. Like that's still like in our DNA somewhere. But at the same time, we're like, hey, actually, no, there's something greater than us, and I need to learn to love one another and respect my parents. And like we have like all of this tension of being biological creatures, but also a little bit more than that at the same time. So how do you speak to this? How do you speak life to this divide between parent and child and trying to be the alpha in your own man and all that stuff?
Well, I just think it's part of where you're at in your emotional maturity as you're growing up. Because 18-year-old Christian would not be, relating to my father in the same way that almost 34-year-old Christian is doing right now. Because I didn't get it. I didn't understand the responsibility that had been on that man even before I was born. And as the firstborn child, he was trying to lead a wife. He was trying to have a job and all these other responsibilities at work and church and elsewhere. And then he adds 3 other children into the mix. Like, I didn't get it. And the same thing for my mom. I didn't understand what it took to be the person providing for those people, for their emotional needs, for making sure everyone was fed, everything was clean, everything was as well maintained as possible. But as I get older, I can look at those things and to finally appreciate, I was being a little jerk over here. You were providing all these things. So number one, let me apologize to you. And good parents will say, yeah, you were, but I still loved you. And just meeting them where they're at. Because I remember I went to college in 2009. And the year after that, I think is when Toy Story 3 came out. And that was like one of the last times my mom went to the theaters with us because she's not a theater person to begin with. But she was crying because, Andy giving up the toys and everything going off to college. I had just done it the year before, and she had cried after she had dropped me off at college the year before. She did for the rest of my siblings. And it's like, she's losing something. It's like, yeah, I'm still alive. What are you worried about, woman? But no, there was something lost there that I didn't understand because I didn't have the emotional maturity to do so. That now when I can look back, I can go, I see now why that affected you so much. And I should have been a little better about handling my feelings. And you can do like, I should have been better all day long, but now I can. So I call my mother, I call my dad to make sure they know what's going on in my life. Because guess what? I am 7 hours away. It's a lot more difficult to do that unless you utilize all this magnificent technology that we have to bridge the gap.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I want to second everything you said, but also take the conversation in a slightly like different spot too. Because I have two lines of thoughts here. Is like one, I'm still stuck on like the biological animal, not animal stuff, because like as creatures, as human creatures, we have lived in a really weird space in the last few decades where like there's an expectant of like your personal immediate family and then just you and your wife and then just you, your wife and your kids, and then the kids leave, and you know, like the kind of isolationist kind of model. But for most of humanity, it's been like your parents and you and your siblings, and everyone still lives in one home or one hut or one tribe. And so like this idea of like isolationist, just you, your wife and kids model has been pretty new. And like the human psyche, I just don't think has really adapted to it. So I think that's part of the problem, is like we weren't actually meant for this model, and our brains don't know how to cope with it. You know, like in a sense, Goofy is right to not let go, because like for most of humanity, that's been reality. Like your kid doesn't just go leave one day. Like he's just becomes his own adult in the house. You know, one day you take the back seat, the kid becomes the alpha. So in another sense, you know, the kid's right to try and like become his own man, because ideally the younger men take charge, and then the older men can just kind of like, yeah, I'll give you some wisdom, and I'm going to sit back and enjoy the spoils of war or whatever. You know, like that's just. But we've changed stuff so much from like what naturally would occur that I just don't think the human psyche is prepared for it, has evolved to it, however you want to word it. So there's that, and then on the other side of stuff, there's like just like the more personal stuff is like for me. I don't think I ever would have said it, but I had this like the Superman model of my dad, like where I like my dad is like the absolute greatest, no flaw, can with a single snap just make things happen if he wants to, and has endless money, you know, whatever. like my dad had it all. Of course he did, because that's what dads are. And you know, like I would have never said that. I would have, like if you would have said those things, I'm like, oh, that's stupid, I would have denied it outright. But like like internally, that's kind of how I felt. So I think once I started becoming an adult, some of the stuff that were flaws of my dad really aggravated me. And I think it's because like I was still trying to hold on to this feeling that like my dad's super awesome. There's no reason for him to get mad in a car. He's just doing this because he decided to be angry. You know, like then you get a little bit older, and I learned humility and learned like, hey, I'm not flawless, and I have all these problems, and I'm not as smart as I thought I was. And then once you get humble about yourself, you start seeing stuff in other people. Like, wait a minute, my dad just gets really anxious when he's driving. Like this whole time, it's not been like anger or anything. He's anxious. He's a human. Certain things cause certain humans to feel certain ways. And I'm like, oh, my dad's a human. Weird.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah. It's just one of those things when you grow up, it's realizing, oh, well, when I wanted dessert or something else, and dad was looking at his wallet, that wasn't like a sense of, well, I can just pay whatever I want. It's a sense of, can I afford to get this to my son or to my children? Or say, hey, Dad, why don't you get one for yourself? I say, oh, I just wanted you to have it, which is a small parental lie told out of good intentions to not make you feel bad, because you don't understand the financial situation, because you're dumb. You're not supposed to yet.
Yeah. Well, and then, of course, all of our loves reflect the true love that is the divine love. So I was like, you're also kind of like seeing stuff like that. So like for me, I now look back at it and I'm like, man, it's so weird that dad just never wanted to eat breakfast or lunch. Why did dad not want to do that? And then now I'm an adult going, oh, dad was actively saving money so that we could have really nice breakfast and lunch. Like dad doesn't not like breakfast. Dad loves breakfast. Yes. Actually. And it's like, oh shoot, he was regularly sacrificing because he loved his family. And it's like you would just never occurred. Like as a kid, you're just like, dad doesn't eat breakfast. You know, you just don't think about it. And then you're an adult and you're like, oh, wow, I owe this man a great debt. And like I think that's the same thing with God, right? Like the more you learn about God, the more you're like, oh, that's what you gave up? That's what you did for me? And it's like, the more it sits in, you're like, oh, I owe a great debt.
It's the difference between being a kid and hearing the story of the Israelites and the Exodus and being like, you know, oh, those idiots, that God was right beside them the whole time. Why didn't they just believe? And then you do an honest self-reflection of yourself and, I'm worse in many ways.
Oh, yeah.
Because I have way more than they ever had. And I still treat them like dirt.
Yeah, no, it's bad. So with that said, Christian, real quick, Jesus told us to hate our father and our mother. How much do you think we should hate our parents? Go.
Well, with that verse in mind, I know what
your reaction is priceless. It's a shame this isn't going on video.
But yes, he did tell us to hate our mother and father. But why? If they're not following him, we're told to honor our father and mother. That is commandment number 5. If you're listing him out, And that is super, super important because we're supposed to love our parents. We're supposed to look after them. But if your parents aren't honoring God, honoring them doesn't mean falling in line. Honoring them means doing the exact opposite of what we typically do, which is just submit, which, yeah, that's a good idea for someone who's actually doing their job. Yeah, submit to good parents in that regard. But there are countless Christians over the world who are just coming to faith in persecuted areas who are living, and they're the only one in the family who are following Christ. And honoring their parents doesn't mean, all right, well, I'm going to be following these things you said to do, or I'm going to be living in the home with you. Sometimes it means leaving. Sometimes it means calling them out on their sin and loving on them regardless. And some of that is being persecuted for it. So, yeah, Jesus is saying that hate your father and mother when they're not following me, because hating sin is what we're supposed to do.
Yeah. I think Jesus is a little bit more confusing than other Christians like to pretend. Like, we like to act like Jesus is really simple and anyone can get it because, like, we want to, like, push Jesus on everyone so much. And I do love Jesus and I do want to push Jesus on everyone. But, like, the fact is, Jesus said that he is the peace, the way, in life. Like he called himself the Prince of Peace, all this stuff. But he also says, I have not come to bring peace. I've come to bring war. I've come to put a sword between father and son. I'm like, wait a minute. But you were peace a little while ago. Now you're not come to bring peace. Like, what do you mean? And like, he's like, love your neighbor as yourself. This is like the greatest commandment. And all the other commandments are part of that, including love your father and mother. But also, hey, you better hate your father and mother. Excuse me, sir. like what? And my understanding of, like, what I heard people say before, and I could be wrong and stupid, and I am stupid, so I could be wrong.
No arguments here.
The word for hate in the Greek is more like to show a disregard for. So I think like what I was taught at one point was this verse is really telling you, like, when it comes to things of God, when it comes to things of Christ, to not have to regard your parents. Like, if they are against God, then you're still for God regardless. And that might even mean coming to different beliefs. Like, I have a lot of different beliefs than my parents when it comes to, like, the Christian faith, even around alcohol. Like, my parents don't believe in drinking alcohol. And I'm like, I can't wait to go to theology beer camp. I'm going to drink at least one of every single beer. And that's not because I don't respect my parents. It's because I have a different view than them. And I had to come to my own views and stances on my own as my own man, much as what, like, Max is trying to become his own person in this film. But finding a way to do that respectfully and kind of navigate these waters can be a little bit challenging. Okay. Yeah. So with that, the places you can find Goofy and Max. Of course, the world's absolute greatest roller coaster ever. It's not Fury. It's not. I can't just start naming off coaster. I got to tell you, the greatest roller coaster of all time is none other. Nope, not the Velocicoaster, the Goofy Coaster. If you're in Disney World, there's a small coaster in the back of Magic Kingdom, and it's fantastic. It's so much fun. Me and TJ got on that, throw our hands up and just scream. We're like, yeah! And it's just a kid's coaster, but it's so much fun for no reason.
They're pushing kids out of the way so they can be first in line again.
That is true. I refused to get off a couple times.
You want to see my genie pass? Joshua says, lifting up his fist.
Oh, man. Of course, Disneyland has Goofy's house, which is a lot of fun. You can also find them all over the place. But if you want to find Goofy and Max specifically together, usually you only see Max if you're in Hollywood Studios. And occasionally, this is my favorite Goofy Max find, because obviously they're at all the character breakfasts. They're all over the place. Like, the list of where all you can find Goofy literally doesn't end. He did a how to stay at home video series during COVID. Goofy is fantastic. Watching him try to wear a mask is hilarious. But
I miss those.
You got to check them out. They're so short, but so stupid and funny. But what was I going to say? Oh, you can find Goofy and Max sometimes at the Haunted Mansion, and they'll be wearing the Haunted Mansion bellhop uniforms together, and that's my favorite Goofy and Max. If you find them, send a picture to systematicgeekology@gmail.com, and I'll give you $1. I don't know. I just love when I see them together. It's so much fun. It's a great character find. Finding, like, the unique characters at Disney World is, like, one of my favorite pastimes. It's great. So we're going to go ahead and jump into our wrap up. If we had to give a recommendation, mine's actually going to be, there's a comic book. There is a graphic novel about the Haunted Mansion that I think is really cool. Since I just mentioned Haunted Mansion, it just made me think of it, and check it out. It's fun. Right. Christian, go ahead.
Season 3 of From is appearing right now, a terribly named show that's very difficult to look up, but a very good show. So check out From Season 3.
Oh, also,
we're to start from the beginning.
And Kingdom Hearts 2 and Kingdom Hearts 3. Anything that Pete's in.
No, I think Will just takes a drink every time you give your recommendations, anyways, even if you don't mention it, because secretly that's what you want to say.
Like in my
So
heart.
you said the quiet part out loud.
In my heart of hearts, I'm like Kingdom Hearts. But I mean, really though, you get the best Goofy and Pete, and I hope Max is in Kingdom Hearts 4. That's all. Anyway, so imagine the groups become Sora, Goofy, Donald, but also Mickey, Max, Riku.
And Riku?
Yeah. I think Max and Riku would get along. Anyway, guys, rate and review the show, Podchaser, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, wherever you can. We do appreciate it. That really helps us out a lot. Again, we want to thank our supporter, Jonathan Augustin. People like you make the show possible. Thank you so much. And if you guys want to be like him, again, Captivate, Apple Podcasts, and Patreon is where you can support this show. Again, since this is a series, you can see a playlist of all our Disney era reviews down below. There's a link. Check it out. And remember, we are all a chosen people, a geekdom of priests.
Hi, my name is TJ. I'm here to tell you about the Systematic Geekology shop. That's where we post all of our merch. It is hosted on Creator Spring, and we have a ton of really cool merch, mostly clothing. We have hats, extra soft t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies, and more. Our hosts wear them all the time. It's actually super comfy. We have glassware, mugs, which everybody loves a good mug. Fill out your cupboard. Get rid of some old ones, which is the part that I never do. That's why I have too many cups. We have cloth bags, posters, and it's really stuff. We like to put our icons on there. We like to put quotes, things we come up with, and it's cool. It's a cool way, and a lot of it is pretty subtle too, to show support for one of your favorite shows. And my personal favorite is actually our SG Dad Cap, which I haven't been reluctant to buy it because now I have to wear hats at work, and then I get tired of wearing hats. But it's really cool. It's really understated. It is our logo right here, and then it says Systematic Geekology on the back. It's great. It's a really good hat. We have a few of them floating around. Check it out. And if we could all just rock the SG Dad Cap in public, I think that'd be pretty sweet.
If you love our show, you can follow the whole network in a single feed on Spotify at Anna's Our Ministry Podcast or the network page on Apple Podcasts. There you'll find shows like The Homely, The Whole Church Podcast, My Seminary Life, Let Nothing Move You, Dummy for Theology, The Bible After Hours, as well as mine and my husband's show, The Clydes, where my husband Taylor and I go through weekly discussions in a devotional conversational method to help us all get closer to one another and God.